Sometimes you just have to stick with the players you love. Welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Monday, April 29th. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White and Chris Towers. Today on the show, another wild and wacky weekend. Who are the top waiver wire ads? The Astros are promoting Joey Loperfido and much more. But let's just get right into it.
Oh my goodness gracious!
All right. Welcome back, guys. Scott, you are up. Player of the weekend.
My player of the weekend is, I know, a player Chris Towers loved a lot in recent years. It wasn't that long ago everybody loved him. It's Joe Adell, because it wasn't that long ago everybody considered Joe Adell a top 5 prospect overall. He got called up in 2020, was clearly rushed. It went horribly. And then ever since then, every chance he's gotten in the majors has gone horribly. And he was in between the majors and minors. He'd kill it at AAA, and then he'd get called up and perform horribly. And a lot of this had to do with problems with striking out and not making consistent enough contact against major league caliber pitchers. And so finally, the Angels put Joe Adell on their opening day roster because they have no other choice.
They literally had to.
Yeah, it was either let him go or let him figure his way into the lineup. And that's why, even though he was on the roster and, all the past failures, there wasn't much reason to be interested in Joe Adell, even though he had a roster spot. But now, all of a sudden, he started 6 straight games. And the reason he started 6 straight games is because he's performing well. And in fact, it caught my attention just how well Joe Adell is performing because of his game Saturday, where he went 3 for 4 with a home run, his 3rd home run, to go along with 5 stolen bases for a guy who, again, is now playing every day. But of course, he strikes out too much, right? He's striking out 21% of the time. Has he just figured it out? It's been so many years now that everybody's given up on that possibility, but he is only 25. It used to be very common for prospects, even high-end prospects, to take 3 or 4 years to figure things out. And maybe that's what Joe Adell's doing. I was putting in some big bids for him in all my 15-team roto leagues, obviously on the deeper end of the spectrum and 5 outfielder spots. So I'm not saying everyone everywhere needs to pick him up, but I don't know why you'd give Joey Loperfido priority over Joe Adell necessarily. Joey Loperfido, who himself he's doing things really well, hitting the ball very hard in the minors, but he's also striking out 1/3 of the time against minor league pitchers. And isn't his playing time, I don't think, is totally assured. And we're kind of getting into the Joey Loperfido talk here early, I guess. Sorry about that. His playing time isn't totally assured, and he has the strikeout issues, and we haven't seen him succeed in the majors yet. So I at the very least, I think they're on equal footing, Joey Loperfido and Joe Adell, in terms of who you prioritize if you need help in 5 outfielder leagues, 3 outfielder leagues. Let's say leagues less than where fewer than 300 players are rostered. I'd be a little less decisive about it. But anything deeper than that, I think you got to make a play for him.
Pop quiz.
Go ahead.
Who is younger, Joe Adell or Joey Loperfido?
Well, the very fact you're asking would lead me to suggest Joe Adell.
No, he is like 1 month older than Joey Loperfido.
Question.
Joey
Very
Loperfido
tricky.
turns 25 in about, 14 days. And Joe Adell just recently turned 25, 21 days ago. So it was a trick question. But the point is, they're the same age. And Joe Adell has the better track record at the minors. Because Loperfido did get to AAA last year and was not very good at AAA, if I'm remembering correctly. So his overall AAA mark is a 907 OPS, 18 homers, 82 strikeouts and 260 plate appearances. That's pretty much what Joe Adell has done at AAA. He might actually have even a lower strikeout rate. So while if I only have room for one of them, I think I would have to make Adell the priority just because, or sorry, Loperfido the priority just because he's the big name. He's going to
right. Yeah, I agree. Like he's going to get more attention on the waiver wire tomorrow. So
he's already more rostered
than Joe Adell.
Yeah. But I don't have a strong lean towards one or the other in a vacuum. And my assumption is that Joe Adell is the more talented player, certainly. So, there's a lot of really cool underlying StatCast stuff for Joey Loperfido. He hit the hardest hit ball of his career. It's like 113.9 miles per hour.
Well, by 6 miles per. Well, it was the hardest hit ball
tracked.
Compared to his time at AAA last year, both his average exit velocity and his max exit velocity are like 5 to 6 miles per hour. This is Joey Loperfido we're talking about. So it's not. I don't think it's fair to say. He's just beating up on. He's a 25-year-old beating up on AAA. Like there has been actual skill improvement for Joey Loperfido that I think makes him a much higher end prospect legitimately than we would have said a month ago. So I don't mean to cast aspersions on Joey Loperfido by looping him into this discussion.
You are saying you like Joe Adell.
Yes, I am comparing him to Joe Adell to kind of open people's eyes to Joe Adell again. And look, maybe Joe Adell strikes out 20 times next week and we never have reason to think about him again. But considering we've always recognized the talent and he just couldn't keep the strikeouts down, and now he is, 25 is not too young for a breakout.
Yeah, and based on his...
too old for a breakout.
Based on his StatCast data, the zone contact rate for Joe Adell, I think that's the key thing to watch. It was 71% coming into the season. It's up to 80% so far. His out-of-zone contact rate is also up about 5 points. And so he's just making a lot more contact right now. Yeah. He's not really changing which pitches he's swinging at in terms of in-zone, out-zone, but he's making more contact without necessarily sacrificing quality of contact. The underlying stats are all quite good for Joe Adell. He has been caught stealing 4 times, which is problematic if they want him to stop, but I don't know if they want him to stop.
I mean, his sprint speed is very high.
Yeah. So
Ron Washington is pushing the whole stolen base thing. So I would guess they don't want him to stop, but
I think there's quite a lot to like there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like both of these players as well. Joe Adell and Joey Loperfido, I think both are in consideration for 5 outfielder leagues. Worth reading off the stat line for Joey Loperfido in the minors this season, hitting .287 with 13 homers, 31 runs, 27 RBI, 5 steals, and an 1106 OPS. He did all of that in 25 games. So just putting up ridiculous video game type numbers in the minors right now. It's a 92.3 average exit velocity, 113.9 max exit velocity. He's 26% rostered on CBS. This is Joey Loperfido. And I think based on his defensive versatility, he's played games in center field, in left field, and first base this season. I think the Astros are going to find a way to get his bat in the lineup consistently. What he does with those at-bats, I'm not entirely sure yet. But I think he's going to play a lot. I think they need him. Like, they're losing a lot of games right now.
Their record is shocking. And I don't think it'll continue. I think it's just one of those early season fluke kind of things. But they're in close. They're more in contention with the White Sox than the best teams.
They are behind the A's and the Angels.
Yeah.
Just
so I'm sure they're looking for a bolt of lightning here. The strikeout rate is concerning. The strikeout rate may undermine everything, and Loperfido may not stick around that long because of it, but he now impacts the ball hard enough that you could see him striking out a third of the time and still being a successful player. And you're right. I mean, Jose Abreu, they owe him a lot of money, and he recovered from a horrible start last year to put up pretty good numbers. So they may not want to give up on him completely, But Loperfido can also play left field where Chas McCormick is doing nothing, center field where Jake Myers is doing nothing, or they could move McCormick to center field. So they have a few options. He has a left-handed bat, Loperfido, right? He's not a switch hitter. Yeah.
He's a lefty.
So that, I think initially you got to think a platoon situation, but performance will drive how much playing time he gets.
Last question on Loperfido. If you're putting in fab bids, how much are you looking to throw on him?
I did one where I put in like 220, but I had a lot left.
Okay.
That's a 15 teamer, right?
220 out of 1,000.
Out of 1,000, yeah.
Okay.
2%.
Yeah.
I put in the 12 teamers, I was putting in more like 8%.
Yeah, I think that's probably about right.
Okay. Again, that is Joey Loperfido getting called up by the Astros. Scott's player of the weekend was Joe Adell. Chris, let's go over to you. Who would you like to highlight?
Carlos Rodon, who I feel like I've been like extra critical of so far this season, and so it was
not as much as me.
Yeah,
you
it was
can't
funny
out-critique me
to look at the rankings and see that I'm actually the high guy on Rodon by like 18 spots.
Well, good for you.
And I feel better about that after this week's start, because this was the closest, like it's actually been a decent season for him in terms of results, but this was the first time I felt like Carlos Rodon looked like Carlos Rodon. And the big thing there was it was mostly slider and fastball. He threw those two pitches 80% of the time. It was 93% between those two pitches in 2022, but only like 75% this season before that. And the biggest thing was he traded mostly cutters for sliders, and the slider played really well. The slider, if I'm looking at the numbers correctly, raised his usage rate from 17% entering the start to 27%. The loss of the slider has been my biggest concern with Carlos Rodon. And it's not even that the cutter has been a bad pitch for him in a vacuum necessarily. It's just I have this nagging concern that the cutter has been impacting the slider. And the fact that he traded cutters for sliders and had his best start of the year certainly makes me feel better about his chances moving forward. He's not, I don't think, ever going to rediscover that 2022 form when he was just arguably the best pitcher in baseball on a per inning basis, frankly. But I do feel pretty good about keeping him inside of my top 45 after this start. And while I'm not necessarily raising him, I'm not actively trying to get rid of him anymore.
There's hope. There's hope for the first time this year with the slider getting so many whiffs that he's just rediscovered it. Because if he's rediscovered that, it changed. Like, I think he's nothing without it, and he could be great with it. And so, now last week I was willing to drop him for most anyone. And now if I haven't dropped him yet, and there's one league where I haven't, it's the only league where I had him to begin with. But now I'm inclined to wait. And in fact, decided to drop Gavin Williams instead.
And just watching the start, the slider looked better too. I mean, it was the best I've seen the slider probably since he's been in a Yankees uniform. So it looked great. The numbers were there on the slider. Obviously, it was a great start for Rodon. 6 innings, 1 run, 8 strikeouts to 1 walk. Chris, you'll enjoy this. I had a segment later on in the podcast. You sure about that?
You sure about that?
Inspired by, of course, Tim Robinson from I Think You Should Leave. And the question was going to be, are we sure that we want to sell high on Carlos Rodon? So after this start, your answer would be...
I mean, like, what's his ERA down to? It's like
240.
Yeah, so
48.
Like,
yep.
If someone looks at Carlos Rodon, sees a 248 ERA, sees a 109 whip, I think 119 whip, and thinks Carlos Rodon, he's 2020, he's going to win a Cy Young this year, I would trade Carlos Rodon to that guy. Okay. There probably aren't many of them, but if they're out there, sure.
All right. Would you guys start Rodon at the Orioles this week? They are 3rd in WOBA against left-handed pitching this season.
Rather not.
I think so. I agree with you. I think I would rather not do that. As great as looking this.
There are a lot of iffy pitchers right now who you went into the season. Like, we'll get to it, but Zach Allen and Tyler Glasnow are kind of entering this week as question marks because of very minor injuries, hopefully, but Obviously we lost Jesus Luzardo. Michael King looks pretty rotten. So I don't know who's got the bandwidth to sit Carlos Rodon.
Yeah,
I don't know if that was probably the wrong word, but yeah.
You might be able to get away with it in a points league just because those are so shallow and you might have solid pitching depth. But yeah, I mean, in a 15-teamer, it's probably going to be pretty hard to pull that off, benching Carlos Rodon after the start. My player of the weekend, and it was inspired, obviously, up top. Sometimes you got to stick with the players you love. Chris has loved Joe Adell over the years, and Scott loved Erick Fedde way back in February. And look at Erick Fedde now. 2 awesome starts in a row. He was up against the Tampa Bay Rays this weekend. It was 8 1/3 innings, 2 runs, 9 strikeouts to 0 walks. Had 14 swinging strikes on 108 pitches. And he did it much differently in this start than he did in his previous.
I think this is actually a really positive sign.
I agree with you. So in his previous start, it was the splitter that he had working, and his sweeper had been getting crushed all season.
He only threw 5 of them in that start.
It was the opposite in this start. He threw his sweeper 48% of the time. It was his most used pitch. And obviously, it helped him dominate. It had 7 of his 14 whiffs in this outing. And, I would argue that he didn't have his best pitch. Statistically, the splitter looks like it's been his best pitch this year. And he almost threw a complete game with 9 strikeouts. So, I am pretty interested in what Erick Fedde has done so far. He's 42% rostered. He's at the Cardinals this week. I think that's a good matchup.
Yeah.
How are you guys feeling about Erick Fedde?
Yeah, I mean, I moved him. He was my 10th sleeper pitcher for next week going into the weekend. And then we see this start and he's moved up to like 4th or 5th in my sleeper pitchers for next week with that Cardinals matchup. But, the whiffs being way up. The sweeper, as you said, he threw it 48% of the time in this one. That was compared to 5% in his last start. So he went from just basically giving up on it to, I guess, rediscovering it. And this is how the last 2 starts are more how I imagined it going when I was hyping up Erick Fedde, who, again, if you weren't listening,
imagine 20 strikeouts in 14 innings.
Yeah, look at his strikeout rate in Korea last year. He had an ERA barely over 2. I thought he could be an ace because, I mean, it's a different league, obviously a lower league, the KBO, but we've seen how good Merrill Kelly has been since reinventing himself there, and he wasn't nearly as good in the KBO as Erick Fedde was last year. And it wasn't just that, but Fedde went to Driveline and completely changed his arsenal before going to South Korea. So those were the first results from the new and improved Erick Fedde. And mainly the 2 pitches that were being hyped up were the splitter, or some people call it a changeup. It's kind of a split change. And the sweeper here. The sweeper was the big bat misser for him, and he hadn't had it. There were no missed bats all spring training. His first 4 starts, there weren't a lot of missed bats. And the ground ball rate wasn't that impressive either. He had like a 70% ground ball rate in South Korea, and it wasn't that impressive. So I was not seeing a lot of signs here for Erick Fedde. But the last 2 starts, it's everything has come together. I wonder, do they use the tacky ball in South Korea? I know they do in Japan.
That I don't know.
Yeah. It stands to reason there's probably something a little different about the baseball there, and maybe Fedde just had to get a different feel for it. But now I think we're to the point where
I think he should be rostered in all leagues.
Pretty much. I mean,
he's 40% right now.
White Sox stinks, but if I'm going to say that about Garrett Crochet, I think I got to say it for Erick Fedde at this point too.
So like Reese Olson is 48% rostered. Who would you rather have?
I think Reese Olson is really interesting too. He's more likely to win games.
More likely to win games. Strikeouts have not, even going back to the end of last season, outside of a couple of starts, strikeouts have not been as good.
Though the whiff rate is still very good on both his slider and changeup, and I think Reese Olson's had 1 bad start this year. It was a really bad start, but the rest have all been great, including what was his start this weekend?
7 innings, 1 run, 8 strikeouts, 13 swinging strikes. He's allowed 2 earned runs or fewer in 4 of 5 starts.
Yeah,
I think I would take Olson over Fedde.
I'm gonna say Fedde, but like that's. I think what we're getting to is Olson is extremely undervalued because I know he's pretty widely available too.
The 5 most added starting pitchers on CBS right now are Mitchell Parker, Bryce Elder, Bailey Falter, Jamison Tyone, Keaton Wynn.
I would take
all
Olsen and Fedde over all those guys. I would take Taj Bradley over all of those guys. He's working his way back. That was a pretty uninspiring list of names you just read. The most added pitchers this week will be much more impressive.
Yeah, I think so.
I understand picking up Bailey Falter for the 2 starts against the A's and Rockies, but long term, like if given me the choice, streamer play or rest of season play, particularly in late April, yeah, I'm going to take the rest of season play.
But one thing I can't stop thinking about is like someone out there added Erick Fedde for like their first ever 2-start streamer. And they're just going to be forever spoiled. They're just going to have the wrong expectations for 2-start streamers because he just had 14 in the 3rd innings, 20 strikeouts, and 3 runs allowed. That was a pretty nice week from Erick.
I'm not sure the city of New York likes that take, Chris. They're coming to get you.
Like what, dude? It's 1 a.m. Like what is going on outside? Where do you live? Like Bushwick? Like
yeah, it's a busy neighborhood. A lot going on.
All right, let's quickly promote the FBT newsletter. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. If you're watching on YouTube, you can scan the QR code that will take you right to the website, cbssports.com/newsletters. Click on the FBT logo, punch in your email address, and it's easy as that. Let's take our first break. When we return, the news and notes right after this.
The best couch potatoes come from Pluto TV country.
And these taters, they like all sorts of different things.
Survivor Channel, Ink Master Channel.
If it's got a spaceship in it, I'm probably watching it.
3 channels dedicated to CSI.
Whatever mood you're in, it's going to be easy watching.
Welcome back in the news and notes. Chris, I am sorry. When it rains, it pours. Jesus Luzardo was scratched for Friday's start and placed on the IL with left elbow tightness, retroactive to April 23rd. And Luzardo has dealt with other, forearm, elbow-ish type injuries. So I don't know where this is going to go, but obviously the first place your mind goes is that it's not going to end very well. We'll see with Jesus Luzardo. Zach Gallen was pulled from his start Friday due to right hamstring spasms. And knowing what we know right now, do you start him against the Dodgers this week?
Yeah, this is the tough thing about both him and Glasnow, who left with what looked like relatively minor injuries, is they've got the Dodgers and Braves respectively this week. So
yeah,
Gallen, I think, is more of a concern than Glasnow, although he did say he expects to make his next start. I still kind of view him a little askew right now. So I definitely think if there's an opportunity to sell Gallen, take it, but I'd probably start him.
I think it comes down to are you playing in a 15-team roto league or are you playing in a 12-team head-to-head points league? 12-team head-to-head points leagues, I imagine there's someone else you can stream over Gallen. Mm-hmm. I'm starting Glasnow either way.
And as we mentioned already, Tyler Glasnow was removed from his start Saturday due to cramping in his right hand. And again, he is going up against the Braves. I agree. I think I'm still leaving Tyler Glasnow in there. Kyle Bradish is returning to the Orioles rotation. And if he stays on schedule, he could return Wednesday at home against the Yankees. My guess is let's play it safe and not start Bradish his first time out, right?
Yes, that would be my approach.
Yeah, I might start him in a 15-team roto. I don't want that to become a thing where we have to make that distinction every time. I feel like if you're in the kind of league where you have to start Kyle Bradish, you know it. Mm-hmm. So it's just if you're in the kind of league where you can afford to give him a turn, go ahead and do that.
Jackson Holliday was optioned back to AAA on Friday. He was 2 for 34 with 18 strikeouts, a 50% strikeout rate on the nose. He's still 89% rostered. What are you guys doing with Jackson Holliday?
I get dropping him in a shallower league. I think if you're in anything where 350 plus players are rostered, let me put it this way. If you're in any sort of league where any prospect is worth stashing, if you're in the sort of league where Junior Caminero is worth stashing, then you should probably keep stashing Jackson Holliday because I think he's the top prospect to stash. I don't think he'll be sent down for long. I think part of this was, okay, well, he's not going to compete for Rookie of the Year and we're not going to get that extra draft pick. So let's preserve the extra year of service time instead.
And one thing they mentioned specifically was that they do have a bunch of lefties coming up that they just basically said they probably weren't going to start him against, so they'd rather him be playing every day than sitting. So
Yeah.
I would assume it's like a Jordan Walker where he's back like early June. I think the timing is probably pretty similar. So
it could be sooner.
Yeah.
It could
absolutely.
be sooner. But it's, part of the reason why I say it's okay to drop him in certain leagues anyway is because, well, we have less confidence in how he performs when he gets back, and there's not going to be nearly the fervor when he gets called up again that there was the first time around.
By the way, I want to go back to Kyle Bradish for a second. He did start on Friday at Norfolk. They have the StatCast cameras there. Averaged 92.5 miles per hour with his velocity. That is 2 miles per hour down from where he was last season. It's essentially spring training, but for a guy coming back from elbow surgery.
Well, elbow injury.
Or elbow injury. Sorry.
He didn't have surgery.
He
might have to have surgery.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of.
Yeah.
I certainly still have that fear. I would definitely try to avoid him if I could.
Last point on Holiday, Scott, if you're looking to get ahead of the curve here, would you pick up and stash Kobe Mayo on the off chance that he gets called up to play third base and they slide Jordan Westburg over to second?
I haven't checked in probably about a week, but Kobe Mayo's strikeout rate is horrible at AAA this year, right?
I just have his minor league baseball page up.
It's gotten better.
28%.
Yeah, 28%.
That's still pretty high, yeah.
It was better last year. He had gotten it under 25%. And so it was up over 30% early this year. It's gotten better. And so maybe that actually foretells his promotion. But I would still guess they'd call up Holiday again before going to Mayo.
Okay. Paul Sewald will have his rehab slowed a bit due to soreness. Josh Lowe was expected to be activated Saturday, and then he wasn't. He's now dealing with hamstring tightness and will have an MRI done on Monday.
Just like the two worst injuries you could possibly have, to hamstring and oblique.
Gosh, nightmare start to 2024 for Josh Lowe. Justin Steele will begin a rehab assignment at AAA on Wednesday.
And that's it. I saw this, the Cubs sideline reporter was talking during one of the games, and the plan is currently for him to just make one rehab start and come back. So
great.
Justin Steele should be back if all goes according to plan next week, which I guess makes sense because he's been able to throw even when he's not been like pitching, because it was a hamstring injury. So his arm should be okay.
All right. Kodai Senga threw an up and down bullpen session on Thursday and is slated to face hitters on Monday. Craig Kimbrell was removed Sunday due to upper back tightness. Luis Robert could be back in mid-May. He's on the IL with a grade 2 right hip flexor strain. Tristan Casas was transferred to the 60-day IL, which means he'll be out until at least June 21st. The Red Sox acquired Garrett Cooper, who I imagine will get to play a decent amount at first base. Any interest in Garrett Cooper in deeper leagues?
Certainly AL only.
Yeah. I think since our last podcast, it's also been clarified that Casas has cartilage damage in his ribs as opposed to a fracture, which has a wider range of outcomes. So very up in the air, Casas's status.
I will say Cooper was playing pretty well for the Cubs. He's generally been a decent hitter, and I had actually just added him in Tout Wars last week. And then he got caught on Monday afternoon, and I couldn't take him out of my lineup. So that's a 15-team league. It's an OBP league, but I could see him mattering. I want to see how much he plays first. But it's a good park.
Yeah, no, I think it's a sneaky play for sure in deeper leagues. Yandy Diaz left Friday after getting hit by a pitch on his hand. X-rays came back negative. He was back in the lineup on Sunday. Jordan Hicks said he experienced a bit of side tightness during his start on Saturday. And he was still really good. He had a career-high 9 strikeouts. Do you start or sit Jordan Hicks in Philly this week?
This was by far the most interesting start of Jordan Hicks' season, I think. 9 strikeouts, no walks. Threw the splitter like 40% of the time. And it was awesome for him. So
it's been awesome all along. And I think just throwing it more, leaning on it more.
He kind of called Kevin Gausman this week.
11 of his 15 whiffs came on that splitter, which is a new pitch for him. He didn't have it in working in relief. So that's part of the reason I've been so fascinated by Hicks. Very high ground ball rate with all that splitter use too. And well, I guess he's always had a high ground ball rate, but would I start him against Philly? I from what I read, the side tightness was late in the start, and he came out for the start of the 7th and didn't last very long in the 7th. So I don't know that he's totally in the clear here.
Yeah.
It comes down to who your alternatives are and how deep your league is.
All right. Nick Pivetta is penciled to make a rehab start on Thursday. He threw 50 pitches in a live batting practice on Saturday. Vaughn Grissom could be activated on Tuesday. He's 39% rostered if you're looking for a middle infielder. Wade Miley was diagnosed with a torn UCL and will undergo Tommy John surgery. Jonathan Aranda joined AAA on Friday to begin a rehab assignment. He's 13% rostered if you're looking for a corner infielder in a deeper league. And a few other names to the IL this weekend. Joey Gallo with a sprained AC joint in his left shoulder, and Jordan Wicks with a strained left forearm. Let's get into the waiver wire pitchers from this weekend, and we will start with the first group, which includes Brandon Pfaadt. Set a new career high with 11 strikeouts at the Mariners. It was 6 innings, 2 runs, 11 strikeouts to 0 walks, 17 swinging strikes. And he changed up the pitch mix in this start. He led with the sweeper, threw it 40% of the time. He's 72% rostered and home against the Padres this week. Erick Fedde, who we spoke about earlier. Reese Olson was great against the Royals. 7 innings, 1 run, 8 strikeouts. He is 48% rostered, home against the Cardinals this week. And Gavin Stone pitched well at the Blue Jays. 7 innings, 1 run allowed, 2 walks to 2 strikeouts, only 4 swinging strikes. He is 53% rostered and at the D-backs this week. Scott, how are you ranking this first group? Stone, Olson, Fedde, and Brandon Pfaadt.
Well, we already covered Fedde, Olson, and I think those two are the ones who I would absolutely make sure to roster.
Mm-hmm. I dropped Gavin Stone for Erick Fedde.
Sinking like a stone. Yeah.
I've been real underwhelmed by him.
I have hope for Stone still, and I know didn't he only get like 4 whiffs in this start, even though it was a good start. But the whiff rate has been very high overall, like over 14. It probably dropped under 14% with that start, but it had been high. It was high last year, and I think the Dodgers are gonna straighten him out. They're gonna figure out what works best for him and set him on the right path, because we've seen it do it. We've seen them do it time and time again with less talented pitchers than Gavin Stone. So I would like to hold on to him. And in fact, I think I'd prefer him to Pfaadt, I still think he's a matchups play just because aside from the sweeper, which was responsible for 9 of the 17 whiffs, he gets hit so hard. It feels like he's always going to be vulnerable to blow up starts, I guess would be the better way to say it, blow up starts. And I'll say Stone over Pfaadt.
All right,
okay with that.
Waiver wire pitchers part 2. Jose Quintana had a great start Sunday against the Cardinals. It was 8 innings, 1 run, 3 strikeouts in that one. Keaton Winn has turned in 3 straight quality starts. He was up against the Pirates, where he went 6 innings. He allowed 1 run with 5 strikeouts. Dane Dunning pitched well against the Reds. It was 5 1/3, 2 runs allowed, 10 strikeouts with 18 swinging strikes. Martin Perez turned in a quality start at the Giants. 6 innings, 1 unearned run with 4 strikeouts. And Graham Ashcraft turned in a quality start at the Rangers. 6 1/3, 1 run, 3 strikeouts in that one. Chris, who are your 3 favorites? This is a group of 5: Ashcraft, Perez, Dane Dunning, Keaton Winn, and Jose Quintana.
It's Winn, I think, by a lot, then probably Dunning, then Ashcraft, but my interest level drops off pretty precipitously after Winn. I can't say my interest level in Winn is super high anyway. Those 4 guys we mentioned before, I prefer him to all of them. I prefer Taj Bradley, like I mentioned earlier, coming back from that pectoral injury to him. So can't say I'm super excited about any of them. Dunning, he had a 3-start stretch last year where he got, I believe, 10 and 11 strikeouts. And then his next 9 starts, he had a 5.40 ERA and a 21% strikeout rate. I think we know what Dane Dunning is, and I don't think it's particularly interesting.
All right, 4 names in deeper leagues. Trevor Williams has allowed 3 earned runs or fewer in all 5 of his starts. He was at the Marlins, where he allowed 1 run over 5 innings. Quinn Priester turned in a solid start at the Giants. It was 6 shutout innings with 6 strikeouts and 14 swinging strikes. Cole Irvin has turned in back-to-back scoreless starts. He was up against the Oakland A's, where he threw 7 shutout innings with 5 strikeouts. And Slade Ciccone of the D-backs, he is now 2 for 2 in quality starts. He was at the Mariners. He threw 6 innings, 1 run, 8 strikeouts with 11 swinging strikes. It's got any interest here in deeper leagues? Slade Ciccone, Cole Irvin, Quinn Priester, and Trevor Williams.
I kind of looked at Cole Irvin in my 15-team leagues where it's hard to find any pitching help on the waiver wire. Back-to-back scoreless outings. One was in Kansas City, one was in Baltimore. 2 venues that help him keep the ball in the park. And, if you're going to be very strict with when you use him, he may deliver you a positive result. It just feels like you're playing with fire with him. And I don't like to manage my pitching staff that way, particularly in roto leagues where one bad start could stick with you for a long, long time, if not forever, because that's how roto scoring works. So ultimately, I decided not to put in a bid on Cole Irvin. I do think Irvin's going to keep his job over Albert Suarez, by the way, with Kyle Bradish coming back. So sorry, Albert Suarez. It was fun. You'll be back probably.
And a couple things to add on Cole Irvin. He is RP eligible. So at least in head-to-head points leagues, when there's 2 starts, I think he's useful, but he only has 1 start this week. He was also someone who came out early in spring and had a huge velocity increase. I think his first spring start, he averaged a higher fastball velocity than he had ever thrown at the major league level. It's completely disappeared, and he's back to basically where he was last year. So doesn't seem to be anything there.
Quick comment on Quinn Priester, too, because this was like his first good major league start, and he was up for 50 innings last year. So I wouldn't call myself an optimist, but Quinn Priester was at this time last year considered a high-end prospect, and he threw his slider 33% of the time. That was compared to like 6% in his first start up this year. It was his best whiff pitch by far last year during the time we saw him. So maybe if he sticks with that heavy slider usage, Quinn Priester could turn into something. But we're a long way from that.
Let's transition over to the hitters from the weekend, and we had some huge performances from specific teams. The Red Sox crushed the Cubs on Saturday, 17-zip on 21 hits. Tyler O'Neill, 3 for 5 with his 9th home run. He also homered on Friday. He is back. He still looks like he is re-breaking out. It's been an awesome start to the season for O'Neill. Willie Abreu, 2 for 6 with an RBI and 2 runs scored. We've talked about him a lot recently. He's up to 53% rostered. Not sure he needs to be rostered in 3 outfielder leagues yet, but if he continues to hit well, I think he's trending in that direction. And Ceddanne Rafaela had the game of his career so far. 4 for 4 with a sock and a shoe. His 2nd home run, his 4th stolen base, 2 doubles, 7 RBI just in this game. He's 42% rostered. Chris, while this was an amazing performance, I personally was not looking to add Ceddanne Rafaela. How do you feel about him after this massive game?
Yeah, I feel pretty much the same. And as for Willie Abreu, he doesn't play against lefties. And so I think that's going to limit his appeal, even though he's playing really well. So it was good to see signs of life from Rafaela, especially, but the red flags are still too glaring, I think, to overcome right now.
I want to say for Tyler O'Neill, for him to come back from the concussion and just like right back to mashing.
Yep.
I worried that was going to slow his momentum and we were going to see old Tyler O'Neill again, but it hasn't gone that way. And his strikeout rate, it's still way down, right?
It's down to 22.5%, so a little down from last year now.
It was lower than that before. It's come up a little bit, but it's not even really about the strikeout rate for Tyler O'Neill, given what we saw from him in 2021. I think this might be a legit resurgence for Tyler O'Neill.
And another one of those times where, Chris, you and I were both very excited about Tyler O'Neill coming into the season. I didn't get him on a single team.
I'm not sure I have him anywhere. Yeah.
How did that happen? What are we doing? Like, just listen to yourself. Take your own advice. And I didn't do it again. The Yankees bats woke up this weekend as well. They put up 15 runs on both Saturday and Sunday. Aaron Judge went 2 for 4 with his 5th home run on Saturday. He had another one on Sunday. Alex Verdugo moved up to the cleanup spot. He went 3 for 5 with his 4th home run on Saturday, added 4 RBI. Anthony Rizzo, 3 for 4 with his 4th home run. Signs of life from Gleyber Torres, who went 3 for 6 with a double and 3 RBI on Sunday. I mentioned they also had 15 runs in this game. Anthony Volpe on his 23rd birthday, 2 for 4 with a sock and a shoe. His 3rd home run, his 7th stolen base. Scott, got to give you credit. I know Anthony Rizzo was one of your sleeper hitters this week, and my goodness.
Alex Verdugo was one too.
There you go. I mean, gosh, Anthony Rizzo on Sunday, 4 for 4 with his 5th home run. He added 2 doubles. And all of a sudden, he's up to a 277 batting average, 5 homers, 787 OPS. It was a really slow start, but this week just corrected everything. Rizzo could be out there in some shallower leagues. He's 75% rostered. The names that are just ahead of him in roster percentage, Jeimer Candelario and Ryan Mountcastle. Scott, would you take Rizzo over either of those names?
I mean, if we're for the kind of shallow leagues we're talking about, I think you could swap Jeimer Candelario out for him pretty easily, though who's going to have the better season? I'm kind of torn between that, but Candelario's done basically nothing so far.
Mountcastle had a pretty good week himself, right?
Yeah, and he's been great since the beginning, so I'd be more hesitant to make that swap. I'd be fine with it if you just preferred Rizzo. I did coming into the year, but myself, I'd probably stick with Mountcastle over Rizzo.
All right, let's take our final break. When we return, more waiver wire hitters. We'll do that right after this.
There are some things in life that you can't quite explain.
An extraordinary story.
Maybe it sounds flawless, looks effortless, or makes you feel like a part of history.
The first ever goal for BFC.
And when all of those phenomenons come together, it's perfect. Pitch perfect.
Welcome back in. Let's continue on with waiver wire hitters. And in shallower leagues, Bryson Stott had his breakout game of the season on Sunday. He went 2 for 3 with 2 socks and a shoe. That's 2 home runs and 1 stolen base. He is down to 77% rostered. It's weird that he's been sitting against lefties when he was actually really good against lefties last year. He hit 282. So I know it's been a slow start for him, but just kind of find it weird. They're not, I don't know, having more confidence in Bryson Stott early in the season. Jonathan India had himself a breakout weekend. He went 4 for 4 with his first home run. He added 4 RBI in that game. I'm seeing a bunch of question marks here.
Yeah, you put 4 home runs. Yeah. You said added 4 home runs. I was like, wait a minute. That doesn't sound right. That would have been
that would be a breakout weekend, right?
Absolutely.
Jonathan India also had multiple hits on both Friday and Sunday as well. The StatCast numbers actually look pretty good in terms of the expected stats for Jonathan India. Michael Garcia really picking things back up. He had 5 hits this weekend. He added 4 RBI and a stolen base over his last 7 games. He's batting .385 with 1 homer and 3 steals. JD Martinez made his Mets debut on Friday, 2 for 4 with an RBI. He was in the cleanup spot on Saturday. He is 60% rostered. Chris, in head-to-head points leagues, some of the shallower formats, would you be particularly motivated to make sure you add any of these names? A Bryson Stott in India, Michael Garcia, or JD Martinez?
India seems under-rostered at 54%. I know he slid down the lineup as his cold start has gotten on, but remember, he was opening the season hitting primarily at the top, and I think he could get back there more consistently. I think he's a lot better than he's played so far this season. Expected stats back that up. So I think India at 54% is definitely under rostered. Everyone else, I think, is probably okay. Stott, 77% rostered for a guy who's not playing against lefties. That seems fine. Honestly, maybe even a little high. And then Michael Garcia, 20 RBI is wild for a leadoff hitter.
Yeah.
That is really weird for a guy who, like, we've talked a lot about him, but he actually been that good. And so the fact that he's got 20 RBI is kind of wild. I expect him to be better than he has been. It's a 660 OPS, but it's mostly just a really low batting average. He is hitting for more power. So I think Michael Garcia, like if you see him out there and you want to take a chance, I still think there's some upside there.
Ryan Jeffers continues his nice start, 2 for 4 with his 5th home run on Saturday. He added 3 more hits on Sunday. He is 60% rostered. So Scott, for those in one catcher leagues, last week, the flavor of the week was Travis d'Arnaud. How do you feel this week? Would you stick with Travis d'Arnaud or maybe go with Jeffers in a one catcher league?
I think my preference would still be d'Arnaud, though Jeffers and the Twins, they have the better matchups. So,
may I make the case for Jeffers?
Sure.
He's hitting second.
Mm-hmm.
He is playing DH a lot for the Twins. I think he's DH'd like 3 of the last 6 and 5 of the last 12. He's started 21 of their first 27 games. He's playing pretty close to every day. Now, partially he has like a 950 OPS and he's not going to sustain that, but I don't know. Anytime you see a catcher getting significant DH opportunities, I kind of think it makes them like a must roster and close to must start player, certainly in any 2 catcher leagues.
Yeah.
Just because of the edge it gives you.
And we have talked about Jeffers a lot. If you're asking me rest of season, just by virtue of, okay, Sean Murphy's going to be back at some point, I would prefer Jeffers. But, one catcher league, I'm not sure you're marrying yourself to either of these guys anyway.
Absolutely.
In a 3 outfielder league, who would you prefer? Alex Verdugo, who, as I mentioned, had a big weekend and he's now batting cleanup, I think at least against right-handed pitching for the Yankees, or Andy Pages, who added 5 more hits this weekend. He has started all 11 games since being called up. He is 51% rostered. Verdugo or Pages?
Pages every single time.
So I had a choice between the 2 in a points league and went with Verdugo, because the strikeout disparity, I think, is going to be significant enough to overcome the power disparity there. But if you're talking a categories league, yeah, Pages. And Pages probably has more upside regardless of the format. Just is he going to meet that fully? He hasn't walked yet, which isn't so great for points leagues. Overall, though, I'm pretty encouraged by what I've seen from Pages. I just don't know that we're going to get a lot of points league use out of him yet.
3 names in 5 outfielder leagues. Pete Crow Armstrong is off to a nice start with the Cubs. In 4 games since being called up, he has 5 hits, 1 homer, 4 RBI, 34% rostered. He has 7 games this week, only 1 lefty on the schedule. Joe Adell, who we spoke about. Willie Castro has third base, shortstop, and outfield eligibility. Over his last 5 games, he has 11 hits, 1 homer, 5 runs, 6 RBI. Let's throw Joey Loperfido in this mix as well. How would you guys rank Crow Armstrong, Adell, Loperfido, Willie Castro?
Loperfido slight edge over Adell, as we talked about at the top of the show. And I don't know that I care that much about the others too. It's kind of a big chasm there between the 2 groups of 2. But I will say Crow Armstrong 3rd, Castro 4.
Agree with that order.
Deep league infielders. Trey Lipscomb had a strong weekend for the Nats. He had 8 hits, 5 runs scored, and a steal. He has 5 steals in 19 games played this season. Joey Ortiz's playing time is picking up for the Brewers. He went 2 for 4 with his first career home run on Friday. He added 4 RBI. He's 10% rostered. Ben Rortvedt could be a thing, I guess, in 2 catcher leagues. He went 3 for 3 with a stolen base on Saturday. He's betting 378 early on. It's a pretty small sample size. Carlos Santana heating up for the Twins. He's homered in 3 straight games from Thursday through Saturday. Josh Rojas was moved up to leadoff against right-handed pitching. He hit a solo homer on both Friday and Sunday. Nick Senzel had a big game on Sunday, 2 for 6 with a double dong. Tyler Nevin, who is the son of Phil Nevin, has quietly hit well with the Oakland A's. He went 2 for 5 with a home run on Sunday. Lots of names here. Any interest in these guys in deeper leagues? Nevin, Senzel, Josh Rojas, Santana, Ben Rortvedt, Joey Ortiz, Trey Lipscomb.
Just Ortiz, that's what he's known as on CBS. I think is pretty interesting for deeper leagues. He's like 10% rostered. 4 for 9, 4 walks against the Yankees this weekend. Hasn't been much power or speed, but he did a little bit of both last year at AAA. So I think there's some appeal there. And then
hasn't been playing every day either. I actually dropped Ortiz in the 15 teamers where I had him because of that. Hopefully it'll change. But.
Yeah, I think it's been slowly changing. Yeah. And then I don't know. A lot of these guys have been around for a pretty long time without much interesting. Like, if you're in the type of league where you're considering adding a 2% roster, Ben Rortvedt,
yeah,
then he probably matters. But that's a very small percentage.
Jake Rogers for him. But that
I
tells
added
you the kind of league it is.
I added Joey Bart in one league where both were available. I'd rather have him.
Agree.
A little worried that Henry Davis might be the one who gets sent down when Yasmani Grandal is ready, which might be soon.
Deep league outfielders. Tommy Pham was in the White Sox lineup Friday, started all 3 games. He had 5 hits this weekend. He batted second in each of those. Jacob Young had a huge weekend for the Nationals, 7 hits, 6 runs, 4 RBI, and 4 steals. He is somebody who had 39 steals in the minors last year. He had 52 the year before. Richie Palacios had a huge game on Saturday, 3 for 3 with a sock and 2 shoes. That's a home run and 2 steals. Signs of life from Andrew Benintendi, 3 for 5 with a double dong, 6 RBI on Saturday. And Mike Tauchman stayed hot, 2 for 4 with a 3-run homer on Sunday. Scott, do any of these outfielders matter in deeper leagues? Tauchman, Benintendi, Palacios, Jacob Young, and Tommy Pham.
Well, first of all, Tommy Pham for MVP because the White Sox won all 3 games this weekend. Yep. They had a back-to-back. They scored 17 runs in a 2-game span and pretty much closed the gap on the Athletics for the lowest scoring offense. So he's unstoppable. They're unstoppable. And he's probably the preferred choice of this group. I am interested in what Richie Palacios and Mike Tauchman are doing, but it would have to be a pretty desperate situation for me to turn to them now. In the leagues where I was even considering it, I found options I preferred to them.
All right, let's get into the rest of the leftovers from this weekend and segment I mentioned earlier. You sure about that? Are we sure that we want to sell high on Shota Imanaga, who continues to mow teams down? He was at the Red Sox this weekend, 6 1/3 innings, 1 run, 7 strikeouts, 14 swinging strikes on 88 pitches. And he did lower his fastball usage in this start. He threw a lot more splitters, 38% usage. And that splitter has looked great so far for Imanaga. It's a .98 ERA, a .80 whip, 13.5% swinging strike rate. Are we sure that we want to sell high on Shota Imanaga?
Do we want to sell high on Joe Ryan? Because I think they might just be mirror images of one another.
But that means we probably should move Imanaga inside of our top 30 starting pitchers, right?
I believe in my most recent update, I had him 34th or 33rd. So I'm not far from
around there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to move him up. He's not gonna have a 0.98 ERA, and of course everybody knows that. It comes down to what you're selling him for. You know, are you selling him for Kevin Gausman? Heck yeah, I'd do that.
What about Hunter Green?
No, I'd take him another.
Although Hunter Green had a great start.
Yeah, there's some positive signs. What about Carlos Rodon?
No.
What about Tanner Bybee?
Those don't seem like selling high to me.
Well, the next...
Well, they were all, for the most part, 20 spots in the pitcher ADP ahead of Shota Imanaga before the season.
I don't think anybody's thinking... I don't think anybody drafted Carlos Rodon saying, I got a sure thing here. You know?
The other...
Rodon was... Yeah.
The other 2 names in this segment I was going to do is, are we sure that we want to buy low on these pitchers? Which brings us to Joe Musgrove, who got crushed against the Phillies. It was 3 2/3, 7 runs allowed, 4 home runs allowed in the start. He still had 15 swinging strikes. It has been a struggle for Joe Musgrove. Chris Bassett, I don't know. You kind of give him a mulligan. It's up against the Dodgers. 2 2/3 innings, 7 runs. He gave up 2 home runs in this start. Would you try and flip Shota Imanaga for either of these two names?
Yeah, I don't think it's high enough.
I don't think so.
I'd rank him ahead of them. Do I want to buy low on Musgrove and Bassett in general? Yeah, in general. Again, you got to present me with what the actual offer is. I'm moving them down in my rankings with certainly Musgrove because of how last season ended with the shoulder issue, and the velocity is down a little this year. So I'm more concerned about his ability to bounce back than Bassett's. I feel like we go through this with Bassett every year, where he just gets throttled a time or two, and we're like, is it all over for Chris Bassett? And then he puts it together and goes on a long run of sustained run of success, and we wonder the next year why we ever worried about him. And Joe Musgrove is kind of the same way. So if you can find somebody who's on the verge of dropping Bassett or Musgrove, and based on the comments I get on Twitter, I think a lot of people are, then you could buy really low on them, and I'd be happy to do that. But no, it shouldn't be like a combined buy low, sell high situation.
Yeah, Musgrove, his four seam, curveball, and cutter all have an expected WOBA over 400 right now. For some context, Yandy Diaz was 7th in the majors in WOBA last season at 402. Those are Joe Musgrove's four most used pitches, and almost always are. So I want to say sell high. What I really want is to be more confident, or buy low. Excuse me.
Yeah.
I want to be more confident that you can buy low in Joe Musgrove more than I want to say he's buy low. So I can't say I'm not at all worried, certainly.
He's 57% started this week, home against the Reds this week. If I could get away from using Joe Musgrove,
I think you'd have to.
I think I would try my best because it's just been a rough go. Starters sit these starting pitchers. Framber Valdez returned with a solid start against the Rockies in Mexico City. 5 innings, 2 runs, 6 strikeouts with 13 swinging strikes on 71 pitches. He is 43% started. Do you start Valdez against the Mariners this week?
Oh yeah, that matchup is. We were so worried about what was going to happen in Mexico City to the Astros pitchers, and both Framber Valdez and Ronel Blanco were great.
Yep.
And for what it's worth, though, just to prove that our concerns were valid, Jose Altuve hit his longest home run in more than 2 years. Like a 438-foot home run.
Kyle Harrison had a great start against the Pirates this weekend. 6 shutout innings with 7 strikeouts. Did lower the fastball usage, threw more changeups and slurves than he normally does. And he's still 84% rostered. He's 44% started. He's at the Red Sox this week. What do you guys think?
So this is, I think, the most interesting Kyle Harrison has looked all season, kind of like Carlos Rodon, because Kyle Harrison's been throwing his four-seam fastball 70% of the time, and this time around it was 40 or 55% of the time. That seems more sustainable. The slurve was really weird because I think, if I'm remembering correctly, he threw the slurve 80% in the strike zone, and then the changeup was all out of the strike zone. So I think the biggest takeaway is just that he has those pitches and he can throw them. He's allowed to. I'm not sure if he knew that he was before that. I was close to dropping Kyle Harrison before this. So I still lean sit, but now I'm hopefully less inclined to drop him.
Next name up here is Hunter Green, who had his best start of the season at the Rangers. 7 shutout innings, 1 hit, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts, only 6 swinging strikes. He leaned all the way into the fastball in this one, 72% usage. Maybe just a case of throw your best pitch more. That's what he did, and that's what worked here for Hunter Green. Not that he got a lot of whiffs. Do you start him against the Orioles this week? They are 6th in WOBA against righties.
If you're in the kind of league where you have to start him, I think you have to start him. If you're in the kind of league where you have a choice, I'd rather not.
Yeah, I tried to find some explanation for what's going on with Hunter Green because his expected WOBA on contact is down to 292. Entering this season, it was 381. So he's gone from extremely bad to extremely, extremely good in a place that is really hard to improve that quickly. And I tried to figure out his fastball's playing much better on contact. He's throwing it in the middle of the strike zone more than he ever did before. So I don't know if that's a good explanation. So I want to believe in Hunter Green. I don't have good reason to yet.
I think he's just having. I think he's always been volatile, and he's been volatile again this year. And I don't know, like, okay, he had his best start of the season, but what happened the time before? He gave up 4 earned runs. It's been kind of one on, one off for him all year, and his whole career's been like that.
Michael King, it's not really working right now. He was up against the Phillies this weekend, 5 1/3 innings, 6 runs allowed. He gave up 3 homers, 3 more walks as well. He's given up some hard contact. The control has been a problem. He's allowed 4+ earned runs in 3 of his last 4 starts. The ERA is up to 5 on the season now. Still 93% rostered. Definitely don't.
All right.
I don't want to play him at the D-backs this week.
All right. So here's the problem. You don't want to start him at the D-backs, right? What about
No.
at the Braves?
No,
What about versus the Yankees?
probably not.
That's looking like the next 4 starts for Michael King.
I mean, I'm kind of.
I think you just drop him.
Right. I'm to the point with Michael King where I was Carlos Rodon prior to this start, which I guess means he's going to go have his best start of the season next time out. But you just like if that 8-start stretch with the Yankees didn't happen, and by the way, only 2 of those 8 starts were really starters length. And we're just assessing Michael King as a newcomer to the rotation here. There's not a lot I'm seeing to get excited. Like his over 5 walks per 9 innings. His ERA estimators are all crazy high.
8 home runs allowed in his last 4 starts.
There's nothing here and you can't hang your hat on track record, like I said, because he's basically a newcomer to the rotation. So it's not a Chris Bassett situation.
The sample size this year is about as big as it was for him as a starter last year.
Probably more innings, right? Or is it the same?
Yeah, I think it's pretty close now.
Yeah.
So you guys would drop Michael King for either Fedde or Reese Olson?
Yes.
I'm hanging on to Michael King where I have him as a spark, but I had one league where I had Edward Cabrera and Michael King, and like Edward Cabrera hasn't given us a ton to be optimistic about, although I still like him. I dropped King. I have more optimism about Edward Cabrera.
Who's the 3rd best starting pitcher to pick up after those? After Olson and Fedde?
In the waiver wire piece I wrote on Sunday, it was Taj Bradley, but
I'd
probably
stick with King over
active.
I'd stick with King.
Yeah, I'd go
over
with
him.
Bradley.
You can make the argument for like Gavin Stone or Keaton Winn, I guess.
Yeah, if it's just to sit on my bench, I'd stick with King over them, but just in case he figures it out. But my confidence is at an all-time low.
King's 8 starts, by the way, were 38 1/3 innings. He's thrown 36 this season, so almost there.
Yep. That's baseball, Susan. 2 pitchers off to inconsistent starts who had their best starts against tough lineups this weekend. Tanner Bybee was at the Atlanta Braves, where he threw 7 shutout innings, 2 hits, 0 walks, 9 strikeouts with 16 swinging strikes. He did throw his slider more in the start. And obviously it was a great one. It was just his 2nd start with 0 walks this season. And Kevin Gausman was up against the Dodgers, 7 innings, 1 run, 5 strikeouts, only 8 swinging strikes on 93 pitches. Velocity remained down. What do you guys think of Tanner Bybee and Kevin Gausman this weekend?
So I wrote about Bybee in Friday's newsletter. I do a part where I write about like 20 pitchers for the upcoming weekend to watch, and he was under the heading, just give us a reason to be optimistic. And he really did that in this one. And the thing I noted was when he gets to 2 strike counts, his strikeout rate is 44%, which is 35th out of 68 qualifying starters since the start of last season. So despite having a pretty good fastball and 3 really good secondary pitches that he can get swings and misses with, Bybee has struggled to put hitters away, and that wasn't an issue in this one. So it's just one start. We'll see, but it was a really promising start.
He did change his pitch mix a little. Went with the breaker more and the changeup less. They both have good whiff rates, but and he walked nobody, which was he walked nobody in the minors and has kind of had an issue with walks in the majors. So I think that's part of it too.
Couple other pitching leftovers. Bad job by me. I mean, we're getting to George Kirby. We're past an hour. I mean, it was an amazing start, but there's not really anything actionable. We're just going to tell you, hey, George Kirby's really good. But he struck out a career-high 12 against the D-backs, 7 shutout innings with those 12 strikeouts, 23 swinging strikes, 18 on the fastball. Just ridiculous stuff from George Kirby. I have a bunch of other names. I think the only other one I really want to mention is Ranger Suarez.
People are going to yell at us if we keep waiting until like an hour in to talk about Ranger Suarez every time out, and people are going to be furious.
Next time, we got to lead the show with Ranger Suarez. I mean, 8 innings, 1 run, 8 strikeouts to 0 walks. He's gone 7+ innings in 3 straight. He's got a 1.32 ERA. So the control has been immaculate.
The thing is,
yeah,
I think he's just executing incredibly well right now.
Yeah.
And he's a decent pitcher who, when he executes really well, like we saw in 2021, can go on runs like this. And if the expectation the rest of the season is what he did in 2022, 3.65 ERA, I think 1.3 whip, it may be a little better than that. But like, if that's the expectation the rest of the way, I'm on board with Ranger Suarez. I think he's going to be a useful pitcher the rest of the way. I don't see any reason to think he's an ace all of a sudden, you know?
Yeah, I basically would have the same thing to say. So we wait a long time to talk about Ranger Suarez and then just call him a sell high, basically. No, like one of my sort of guiding principles, and I don't think I'm different from you guys in this regard, is everything regresses to the mean. And so when you hear us talk about a player who's performing well saying, oh, this is a good time to sell on him, or a player that's performing poorly, oh, stick with him, it probably drives you a little crazy, because how could you say that? Well, I think everything regresses to the mean, and usually it happens within that season. Sometimes it takes a little longer and carries over to the next season, but eventually it regresses to the mean. The exceptions would be if there's a substantive change, like an underlying change that you pick up in, some of you could usually tell by the data if there's been a skill change for the player, or if there's been an approach change, a process change for the player. Then he becomes a new player, and you don't know what the mean is anymore. So that would be one reason why I would say, okay, well, this is different. He may not necessarily regress to the mean, or if it's a young player and he just kind of learns how to polish everything. But I don't think Ranger Suarez fits into either category. I'm not seeing substantive change here. So I think he's going to regress to the mean ultimately. Doesn't mean he's not worth rostering and starting in fantasy, but I don't see him being like a Cy Young candidate, as Chris said.
I see a lot more to be excited about with Tanner Houck, who had a really good start that we are running out of time to talk about, or Jordan Hicks, who had a really good start. But yeah, Ranger Suarez absolutely is and should be rostered in all leagues moving forward.
Couple hitting leftovers. Mookie Betts is running more this season. He has 3 steals since Thursday. He has 8 stolen bases overall, and that's in 30 games. He had 14 in 152 games total last season. So could see a pretty big steal number from Mookie Betts this season. Bouncing around here, I wanted to mention Steven Kwan. He's off to a really nice start. He added another home run. He's up to 3 homers already, and he hit 5 home runs in 158 games last year. Coming into the season, we heard that the Guardians, and in particular Steven Kwan, wanted to try and hit for more power. And so far, he's doing exactly that. The expected stats look great for Steven Kwan as well. Francisco Lindor coming around. He had a huge game on Sunday, 1 for 3 with a sock and 2 shoes. And over his last 15 games, he is batting .293 with 4 homers, 3 steals, and a .921 OPS. Some bullpen updates from the weekend for the Orioles on Friday. Craig Kimbrell got the 9th with a 1-run lead. He gave up a double, a walk, a double, a walk, and a walk. And then he was taken out of the game. He took his second blown save. And on Sunday, Kimbrell got the 9th with a 1-run lead. He gave up 2 runs, took his 3rd blown save, and his first loss. Dealing with an injury, we'll have to learn more about it. But if that is a longer-term thing, my guess is Yennier Cano is the next man up.
It would have to be Yennier Cano, right?
Yep. For the Oakland A's on Friday, Mason Miller pitched a perfect ninth. He struck out 2 for his 7th save. That was his first time working on back-to-back days all season. He now has RP eligibility. Give me a thought, a look into the crystal ball. Where might Mason Miller rank in your relief pitcher rankings later this week?
I need to get him into the top 12. I don't have him there yet, but I probably need to.
I'll probably have him around 15th.
Okay. For the Pirates on Friday, well, we thought David Bednar was back. He got the 9th with the game tied. He gave up a walk-off 3-run homer. And then on Saturday, Bednar got the 10th inning with a 3-run lead. He gave up 2 runs, but picked up his 5th save. Is there anything in particular you're seeing with Bednar? I know he had the lat injury in spring training.
Yeah. I don't see anything beyond the results, but the results are ultimately what counts for closers, especially. And I wonder if they're close to pulling the plug, at least temporarily. What helps is that Aroldis Chapman hasn't exactly been sharp either.
Yeah. His curveball whiff rate is way down is the biggest thing, but it mostly seems like the fastball is just getting hit hard. So I don't have anything specific there, but my sense is that I wouldn't be concerned personally.
All right. For the Mariners on Saturday, Andres Munoz got the 9th with a 2-run lead. He struck out 1 for his 4th save. For the White Sox on Sunday, Jordan Leisure entered with 1 out in the 9th, a runner on 2nd with a 2-run lead. He got the final 2 outs for his 1st save. Michael Kopech had worked Friday and Saturday, but has also struggled a bit recently. Do you think Leisure could get save opportunities moving forward, or just
Not
Kopech
really.
needed a day off?
I think just Kopech needed a day off.
All right. Yeah. And then for the Phillies on Sunday, Jose Alvarado was back in the 9th inning. He struck out 2 for his 5th save of the season. To stream or not to stream on Monday, I guess we can look at Bailey Falter at the Oakland A's. Maybe Yariel Rodriguez against the Royals. Jake Irvin at the Marlins.
Yeah, Jake Irvin and Trevor Rogers, both sides of that game, I could see being good.
Okay.
Don't love any of them.
Yeah, not super excited, but yeah.
Yeah.
On Tuesday, we have Spencer Turnbull at the Angels.
Oh, he's still getting starts.
According to MLB.com, as of now.
Yeah, okay, good.
I thought that was...
Taijuan Walker was not good in his return.
No, he was not. Simeon Woods Richardson at the White Sox maybe could work, although Tommy Pham, MVP.
Yeah.
Ryan Feltner at the Marlins could work.
Yeah, no, actually, I think that one's fine.
I think
you have a lot
exposed.
more. You have a lot more faith in the Marlins than I do.
I would rather Kyle Gibson at Detroit.
John Gray against the Nats, maybe.
Oh yeah, that's the best one. Yeah. John Gray, best one of the next 2 days.
Tuesday on the whole, better than Monday.
All right, we're gonna wrap there for Scott and Chris. I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning into Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify, and we will be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.